All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
We can, yep.
So
Do you want me to?
do you want to introduce the committee purpose and plan, or do you want one of us to do something?
Yeah, I was just wondering who was going first. You wanted me to. I'm happy to give kind of a brief introduction, and you guys can fill in any details that I miss, because this is my first time serving on this committee, and I got volunteered myself maybe to chair the committee. So welcome everyone. So the Priorities Committee job, if you will, is to advise the lead agency via a letter to the commissioner on what our priorities are for the brain injury community for the upcoming, I think, state fiscal year, although we have a little caveat this year as to how we're doing things a little bit differently. But that's our goal, is to deliver a letter to her that we're going to hopefully, develop kind of what our priorities are in this meeting. And then we'll present those priorities to the full council at their July meeting for approval. Assuming both of those pass muster, then a letter will be penned to the commissioner expressing what our priorities are. What's a little different this year is typically we do one letter a year, but in talking with the commissioner, the timing of when we send her a letter, which is always in August, is not the best timing, because she has already submitted a lot of her budgetary, a lot of DARS's budgetary proposals up to the governor's office. And so by the time she gets our letter, I mean, that's great for her to see our priorities. But if there's anything budgetary wise that we'd like maybe for her to address and DARS's kind of budgetary proposals to the state and to the governor, we're a little late. So the plan this year is we're going to write a letter, as we always do, and then we're going to write another letter in January that'll reflect what we think, are the issues that we want her to address in next fiscal year's budget. And I would presume, although Chris and Donna, you can tell me if I'm wrong, that then we will be on it, writing that letter every January cycle after that to align us up with that.
Yes.
So does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So in saying that, I know, thank you, Donna, for sending out the past several years priority letters for us to review. One of the things that, Chris and Donna and I chatted with briefly before this was this might present us an opportunity maybe to do things a little bit differently. If you look at the past letters, and Donna, I'm sure you're going to pull them up, you'll see a lot of similarities between them. They hit all of the big issues that we're facing as a brain injury community, from neurobehavioral crisis to community services, housing, all of that. Most of those are budgetary things that we're asking the commissioner to address. And then there's also a policy thing or two in there. A big one has been the data sharing that we've been requesting with the Department of Behavioral Health, and that's something that the commissioner and DARS have been able to make significant progress on. So in kind of thinking about how we want to approach things this year, one school of thought would be maybe we just give her some things that she can address. I want to say policy-wise, because I'm not thinking of a better term, and keep the things that have the larger budgetary implications and kind of save them back for January. So maybe just come up with one, maybe two things that we really would like the lead agency to address from a policy standpoint with this letter, and then using our January letter to really address the issues that require budgetary changes to happen. So I think that was a long enough explanation there as to what our intent is and possibly one direction we want to take on it. And I'll stop talking for a little bit and kind of see where we're at with the flavor. And Donna, thank you for pulling up. I think this is the 2019 priorities letter, but I looked at the last 3 years and they're all fairly similar in what we're requesting.
Do you want me to pull up the 2020?
I guess that would probably make most sense, just since that's the most recent letter.
So while Donna's pulling that up, does anybody have any questions about the process?
I guess my question was, I couldn't tell from the 2019, is there always a survey that goes out prior to the development of the letter, of only if this group chooses to survey people?
Typically only if the committee would like more information, if they feel that there's not kind of been enough information in recent time. And that was why the last committee decided to do that.
Thank you.
Sure.
And was
And
that
I
the,
think one of the, go ahead, Jason.
sorry, I saw that as well. And I know BIV did a survey last year as well, and so I just maybe assumed that was part of BIV's kind of needs survey that they did. I didn't realize the council did a specific survey on these needs as well.
And I think it was interesting that survey brought up some other things that hadn't necessarily been in previous letters, things like transportation. And of course, COVID was just emerging at that point in time. And what the last committee really struggled with was that with all that information, it was really hard to narrow it down. And that is one of the toughest things about being on this committee. There's so much that's important. And council will be working on a broader state plan for brain injury, through this year. And that will help to drive things. So the priorities letter is the opportunity for council to kind of say, in the immediate future, this is something that we want to highlight out of all those things that we know are important. This is something we'd really like just to make sure that you're very much aware of, and or there's something an action we'd like you to do. So that's a way, and we didn't have that last year. We didn't really have a multi-year state plan in process. So that's kind of why the last committee chose to cast a wide net, and why this year we're thinking, do you want to go a little bit more narrow? As Jason said, one of the actionable things that when the commissioner got the letter that she knew she could do was to initiate conversation with the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services to talk about data sharing as is required in the 2015 budget bill. As the result of that, we kind of moved past even the data sharing, and now in our federal grant that we're waiting to hear back about, a great deal of that activity is going to be about getting screening into the CSBs, and then that will provide data. But the ultimate goal of that data was to get better services to folks who had co-occurring mental health, substance abuse issues. Another thing that the commissioner didn't specifically take action on, but the committee highlighted the needs of caregivers, and that also became a big part of our federal grant that BIAV will be taking the lead on. So there'll be several things being done. So that's kind of how the priorities letter, the recommendations that you all make to council can help just to illuminate that one or two things. It doesn't mean we're going to stop working on the rest of them because there's just too much work to do.
So what is kind of everyone's, I mean, I think we have two things. One is kind of the process which we take here if we want to, you know, have a little deviation where we focus on one or two policy things and leave like this first recommendation of requesting funding, which is always at the top. If you look at the last three, I mean, neurobehavioral crisis services are always like, that's always like right in the beginning. And those issues require funding to fix. If we want to leave that to January, so that's one of the decisions. And then the second big one is, all right, well, what are what are the priorities that we want to actually, what are the issues that we want to send to the commissioner for her to, on behalf of the lead agency, maybe take some action upon?
I think the rationale for sort of dividing how that work is presented makes sense. I did want to just throw this out there because one of the things that I had asked Anne about was how do you get information sort of back about what the actions were in the priorities letter. And so it did sound like, you know, that was something that could use, you know, a little development. And I didn't, you know if that could sort of fit in something like this, but, you know, asking for some sort of report or on kind of how the 2020 priorities were considered.
It's a really good point, Amber, and I'm glad you brought it up. And you know, sometimes the issues are so big that, and because of the timing, there's nothing that Doris can necessarily do as a result. But either way, information should be reported back to council, and we will make note and do that. And Nick, I apologize. Were you getting ready to say something? Nick, did I cut you off from saying something? Hey, Nick, it's Chris. I just want to make sure. Can you hear us? Okay. Keep going. I'm just going to message Nick.
Okay. Amber, I like that idea too. And again, possibly that's something we could put in the conclusion of our letter is, you know, just to increase communication / transparency, you know, like if we could also receive an update on the prior year's letters and kind of where things have gone since then. And that way we would know officially if progress has been made on some issues, and likewise if there's areas that progress hadn't been made. I think that would be good for us to know. And I don't know if we request that back in a letter from the commissioner, Chris and Donna. I mean, that's kind of how I was thinking about that. Like, hey, like you send us a letter back saying this is what the agency has done in response to last year's letter.
Yeah, I mean, either that or she could come and talk directly to the council.
Okay. Well, what are folks, I mean, we all serve on the council, so I think we all are aware of the immense needs that are out there across the brain injury community. What are some of the things that we might want to put in a letter to the commissioner as kind of our big priorities for this year? And you know me, I always have an opinion on everything. I told Chris and Don, I said, I really don't have a big issue, but a couple of things we discussed, and one of them that really resonated with me is employment. That's been an issue that the commissioner has brought to our attention in the past. She brought it to the provider's attention that she thought the employment outcomes for persons with brain injury could and should be better than what they are. And there's been some preliminary work between the Provider Alliance and DARS Vocational Rehab Services to start to build some connections to making it better. But as I was thinking, if there's something that the commissioner really could have impact on in a shorter year like this, that isn't funding wise, it's what her and agency does, which is employment services for persons with brain injury, and getting those employment services to work more collaboratively with the not only the provider network that's out there, but just kind of the specific needs for persons with brain injury. So that was kind of the one issue that really kind of resonated the most with me. But again, I'm open to any and all suggestions for other issues.
Well, as a direct service provider, I'm always going to be an advocate for direct service to people with brain injuries and also residential. It is very difficult to find residential placements for people with brain injury. So, case management, direct service, residential, supportive residential is a need.
Absolutely agree with that one.
Sorry. Yeah, and I was going to ask Cindy if you were talking about just the housing itself, but it sounds like you're talking about housing and supportive services to be independent.
Right. Appropriate residential with support in place, not just not independent housing necessarily.
Sandy, does that match what you were agreeing with too?
Well, in the broad picture, yes, but I'm totally not. It's my point of view is totally not independent living. It's residential, long-term support and living.
And there is a big lack of that in our state for younger people. We look
Yes,
at
there is.
needing to place people in the nursing home or assisted living, and it's just not appropriate for a younger person.
I agree. My son is placed in Boston for that very reason.
Right.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, housing was the other thing that we talked about, and it is a huge need. It's cumbersome. It's expensive. And one of the things we were talking about on one of our advocacy meetings was, the state is getting all this federal money from I don't know what it's called, the most recent CARES Act. And they're going to be having a special session this summer on how they are going to expend this money. And it is a lot of money. And so one of the things that we've been talking a little bit about just briefly, and this is all new, is, looking at maybe some bricks and mortar stuff for this. When you talk about housing, one of the big costs of housing is not just the services for it, but actually the building costs a lot of money too. So I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing that out there. This is kind of a once in a, maybe like, I don't want to say a lifetime, but it's a unique opportunity for us to potentially leverage some of this money the state's going to have to spend in the next 3 years, and the money will go away. So is there something we could do housing wise if we could engage some of that money?
That would be awesome. But just, I just need a little more explanation. The letter that we're preparing, that we're in this meeting for today, we're going to do another one in January. And so this one is supposed to be like abbreviated. Am I understanding that correctly? Yes. Okay.
I think, Jason, that's what your kind of the idea that you started with, that there's only so much time that the commissioner has this year, and certainly can't do anything that impacts the general state budget.
So
Would that be
just,
accurate?
Yeah. So yeah, and that's why I advocated, talked about not putting too much funding related in here, because her funding request honestly is probably already, if it hasn't been submitted yet, it's going to be submitted in the next couple of weeks. And by the time she gets this letter, it's well out of her hands to do anything about it. Now with the federal money, I mean, I don't know. I know there's a special session in August. Again, I don't know timing wise if that'll work. That's the plan, as I understand, is the General Assembly is going to have a special session in August to decide how to spend this hundreds of millions, maybe even billions of dollar federal money that is new CARES money that they have to spend.
could this letter be tailored towards our suggestions towards that, since that's coming up in July, or with this different apples and oranges?
We can tailor the letter however we want to tailor the letter, I guess is the answer to the question. But yeah, I hadn't thought about that until you guys started talking about housing, and then the conversation I had last week. And again, I don't know if that's all going to line up, but it would seem like a unique opportunity might present itself here, where the legislature, the governor may be asking, how are we going to use all this money? And there are restrictions on how they can use the money. I don't even know if they know what those restrictions are yet, quite frankly. But I think we want to position ourselves to, if they have money to spend it on us, spend a part of it on our community.
As my kids would say, put dibs on it.
Right, exactly. Yeah. If you're not asking, you're never going to get. So,
Right. I have a meeting tomorrow with Ann McConnell. And I'm not exactly sure what the subject matter is. I know it has to do with this neurobehavior rehab plant programs, and as pertains to my son individually, but I'm not sure what it is she's trying to bring up with me, but it has to do with that July's meeting or something. I don't know. But if this letter is only going to be good until January, then we do another one in January, maybe, just my idea. I don't know how everything works, so just bear with me. But it seems like maybe we could use this as, like I said, a dibs letter on, this is, what we need, or what we recommend that some of that money be spent on. But if this is a completely different subject matter, it's going to DARS for their budget, and we're going to do it again in January. I don't know. You guys have to figure that out.
Well, Sandy, I think you make a good point. You can see this letter as a stepping stone, because in a sense we're looking at a shortened time frame, and that doesn't mean that it's only shortened in terms of the commissioner being able to ask for anything in the budget. But she's got a longer period of time then to take other actions if what you're recommending it has to do with something that she could start a process on. And the idea around the CARES Act housing is a little bit imminent, and so starting the conversation about housing there could be a good thing, and see where that leads. You can ask her to please know that housing is important, and that you're aware that the council is aware that this is going to be happening over the summer, and you'd very much like her to advocate. You could also suggest then also that maybe some of your suggestion has to do with asking to convene a committee to talk with her about housing needs as a result of this conversation, or those kinds of things. It doesn't always have to be a specific budget request or specific legislation. It can be something that starts the process moving. And then next year, you get an opportunity, because it will be earlier in her budget planning year, to be a little bolder.
One of the issues, I mean, we tried to do a housing budget amendment last year, and we put it all together, ready to submit it. And then we pulled it at the last minute, just because there were too many questions around how it actually would be administered. And so, Chris, your point about like a housing committee, I know BIV is doing some work right now. And actually, we have a meeting at 3 with the Alliance meeting, and Ann's going to be talking about the person they're contracting with to do some of that work. But some type of housing committee, like you said, I think, because housing is residential services, housing, however it is super complex. You know, there's a whole array of services, as you might, you know, Sandy, you know, neurobehavioral, the intensive, you know, 24/7 services, to Cindy, what you were talking about, which is, you know, more supported residential. There's such an array of services, and how you even begin to start to put all those puzzle pieces together of what's the proper assortment of those services is really complex. And, you know, I think last year we were kind of, you know, throwing a couple darts at the dartboard there, but it'd be really nice to have a more comprehensive plan in place and be like, hey, this is what we need. You know, we need money, obviously, to fix it, but if we have money, this is how we would put things together in Virginia.
And I think DARS always appreciates it when it's a collaborative approach. You know, it's not just saying to DARS or to the commissioner, we need you to do this, but that, you know, Council, the Alliance, BIAV, and DARS are all interested in this issue. Let's see what we can do together.
Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, working with older adults as well, we talk about a continuum of care, that, you know, different levels of care. And I think for the brain injury community, there's a whole needed continuum of care. And maybe we could integrate that into what we're talking about. It's just not one thing.
Mm-hmm. And going back to what Jason was saying about the plans last year, if you start to flesh it out and to build it, then the advocates know more about what to advocate for. And DARS knows more about how to help to support that.
And having like a cross-agency, I don't know if this is within our purview, but you can only ask, housing committee, where you might have someone from, you know, that from the housing community, not just someone, but someone's, and you know, there's a whole array of new Medicaid waiver housing services, sponsored residential, which is something I don't even think really existed in Virginia 4 or 5 years ago. Now is taking on is a waiver service, and so lots of people are getting sponsored residential. And then so we could pull in experts from, you know, DBHDS, Department of Housing, you know, some of the big housing nonprofits here in Virginia, Virginia Supportive Housing and Homeward. If we could get a couple of those on a committee to help us come up with the plan. This has probably been done for other disability communities that have bigger revenue sources than brain injury. So in some senses, we just need the outside help to do it. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need people who've already invented the wheel to tell us how to put the wheel together.
When the training center closed down a couple of years ago in Hillsville, there was a big push to find housing for all the people that closure was going to bring about. And it brought about some creative community responses to housing these people with disabilities. I know in Wythe County, we saw a partnership between the CSB and our Hope Ministry Center, which is a housing provider in the county, and they came together with supportive services and housing to meet the needs of those people being displaced. So, I mean, that would be a good place to get some information.
And Cindy, that was probably a result of the DOJ settlement.
I think so.
Okay.
We all are doing some really great thinking here, and I like also, and I obviously can't speak for DARS or the commissioner, but, you know, being proactive to try to look at this so that you don't have to deal with the DOJ settlement, and to see what lessons have been learned by those folks and what can be done. So I'm kind of hearing you all saying that what you'd like to ask the commissioner or what you'd like to put in the priorities letter is one, that, you know, if any consideration of the new housing funds that are coming out of the CARES Act, if commissioner could help to advocate that some of those could be used to support individuals with brain injury, and that you're also asking that, you know, that this is a long-term and a complex issue, and you're asking her to consider, you know, putting together a committee that would work together to try to build this picture, or to of what the housing and supportive services needs are of individuals with TBI or brain injury. Sorry. Does that feel like it matches what you all have been thinking and talking about?
Yes, I think so. It was very, very good.
Yeah.
So now our question becomes, would anyone like to draft that, or would you like staff to draft something that we could have you, so there has to be, you know, a first draft of not the full letter, but what gets presented to council. And we typically look to get materials out to council at least 2 weeks before the meeting, which is going to be, so that would mean, is that July 9th, Donna? Is that the deadline for materials going out to council?
The meeting is July 23rd, so hold on, I've got too much stuff up here.
Yes, that's July 9th.
Okay,
So,
yeah, July.
so one thing is drafting a letter that you all are drafting content that you all then edit. And that can either be a volunteer from the committee, or Donna and I can do that and send to you. Gets sent to council, and then they vote on it at the meeting. Something I'm going to suggest to you guys, but you don't have to take this suggestion, is that, do you want to ask council to allow you to continue to be the priorities letter committee in January, so that you can continue what you started? The other option is, you know, you just wait until January, and anybody that wants to be on the committee again can ask to be, or you could just ask the council to pass you through again.
I mean, I think since we've already started on it, and, you know, we're looking at it from this long-term or medium-term perspective of, you know, writing 2 letters, it'd be nice to have some continuity. But also, I mean, I think we should ask for other people who want to serve. You know, someone else wants to serve on the committee in addition to the folks that are already on here. I think I would certainly welcome any additional help that we could get on this committee, and any additional perspectives too.
I agree.
Nicely said, Jason.
I agree as well.
So Chris, Donna, would it be an imposition for you guys to put together a draft of our recommendations, which you just summarized there, around the housing issue, for the committee to kind of look at, and and then we can get that draft ready, finalized by July 9th to be sent out with the other documents?
We're glad to do that.
Okay. And I think it's called ARPA is the new CARES Act. Don't quote me on that. We can look it up. It's the American Rescue Plan. I don't know what the A is on there, but it's the one that Biden signed. And that's the
Okay.
one that they're going to be having the special session in August to figure out.
We'll get the actual language and put that in there for you guys.
Okay.
Is everybody feeling comfortable with the direction this is going?
I am.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Anything else we need to talk about today? Well, we really appreciate your creativity on this, your open-mindedness. I feel kind of excited about the direction that you're all taking this in. I think it will have really good ramifications, really good outcomes for people with brain injury. So
Thanks,
next
Chris.
week
I
or
agree.
so-
I really, oh, sorry, I interrupted.
Oh, go ahead.
I just said I'm really excited about this too. Like this is I'm glad that it was kind of just brought up organically, like it was, that the housing issue, it is complex. And we can try to throw darts at a dartboard and stab in the dark about it, or we can try to develop a blueprint and a plan to guide us moving forward. And I think now's the appropriate time to do that. And we can also put a plug in there. Hey, we know we got all this federal money coming in. So if there's something that you see, the commissioner sees, or the advocates see as a way that we can access some of that money, then, particularly for housing, let's, we have to hop on that if we can.
It's giving me hope. My son's been in Boston for 12 years since his accident, and we away from all family. So this is leading towards something that is going to make huge differences for at least 50 people that are in Braintree right now, that they can all come home. If we build it, okay, they can come.
Hope's a good word, Sandy. We like hearing
Yeah.
that word.
Yeah. And Sandy, I know that's been a I mean, I don't even want to put it in the same shoes. Your frustration having a family member up there, but I mean, it's been something that we've been every single year. We take this to the General Assembly. Neurobehavioral Services is our, that they've done studies on it down there, the Joint Commission and JLARC saying we need to do something, and they just kick the can down the road every single year, and it's just really, really frustrating that continues to happen.
I've been watching it from the outside, so I was hoping maybe being a little bit on the inside, I might be able to kick the doors open a little wider. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, we will. You keep kicking, eventually that door opens.
Thank you.
I will tell you, and Sandy's on the executive committee, and they met last week. And one of the things that they're going to be talking to the full council about at the July meeting is use some of that presentation education. I think Don and Sandy, they talked about it as professional education for council members, is to take a deeper dive into some of the issues and learn them more from kind of a 360-degree perspective. One of those being neurobehavioral, and making sure that we all understand what neurobehavioral means and what's that like from the individual and the family side, which Sandy speaks to so well. What does it look like from the policy and the funding side? Because this is another one of those not simple issues where it's just a matter of saying, why are these people there, and as we all learn to understand it better from all the different perspectives, then we all can be better advocates about it. So you'll be hearing a little bit more. That's why your conversation bringing around to housing, thank you, Cindy, for bringing that up. It's pretty timely in terms of some other places that the executive committee is going to take it. Jason, you'll be pleased to know this conversation started about transportation. So we talk about lack of transportation for people with brain injury, and you've been an advocate on that as well. But what does it exactly mean? What does it mean to be a person with a brain injury and to try to access public transportation or other forms of transportation? So there'll be a variety of topics over the next year, pending the conversation with the full council, that you get the sneak peek and the preview, to try to look at these issues in a deeper way. And without even knowing that, you guys have kind of advanced that around the housing front. So pretty neat. All right, look, even with a late start, done at 1:30 in an hour. Jason?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Donna, for everything you do. You are so appreciated.
Yeah, thanks, Donna, for sending everything out, and you guys for meeting with me ahead of time. So I looked like I knew what I was going to talk about since I chair this committee. So.
All right. We'll be getting something to you in the next week to 10 days. And thanks so much, everybody.
Perfect. And Chris, if you guys are going to get something to us, and we can just respond back via email, the thread, and kind of if we have tweaks that we want to make to it or something like that. And I guess if we reach some impasse, which hopefully is unlikely, we could get back together like this.
Yeah, if you need to reconvene, we can do that. But otherwise, anything that can be done by email to get it ready to present to council.
Okay.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Jason.
Yeah, it's just good seeing everyone.
Take care.
Okay.
Donna,
Thank
you got a minute to stay on?
Sure.
Chris, Donna,
Bye.
real quick, are you guys joining us at 3?
We are. Is that okay?
Yes, that's perfect. Just wanted to make sure. I know that time got, well, at least it was messed up in my head. So,
No, the agenda looks good.
okay, we'll see you guys at 3 then.
All right, thanks.
Yep.